Okay, so we are doing a review on Flip This House. So Tyson won. He achieved $1 million in assets before I did. I got some cash. We were able to JV on 2 deals over here, so that was good. So, comments, Tyson?
Nothing.
Nothing? Okay. So the interesting part that I took away from this game
I won.
You won? Good. Flip this house, great.
So not all of the purchase cards are the same. Some have rent on it and some have no rent. So what happens is when you pass sort of like the part where you have to collect rent, if you have a bunch of flip cards that have no rent on it, then you basically pass and collect nothing. So you do want to just keep in mind that the flip cards that have rent on them are more valuable. Okay. So the overall review for the game, Flip That House, is pretty good. Some of the comments are that the fake money is really waxy and it doesn't feel like Monopoly money, and so it's a little bit harder to handle. But they're cute. Like the design on them is it's funny looking. The lender paper, the private hard money lender paper, it talks about the interest rates and so forth like that, but it doesn't talk about when you land on, there's a couple of blocks here that when you land on the money you have to borrow. It doesn't say how much you have to borrow. And so it leaves it up to you as the player to say, well, I'm only going to borrow 5,000 or 10,000. Then the only other sort of comment that I have about the game, not on the good side, is that the manual is a little bit lacking in the instructions. So what I mean by that is on the first card, when you get your flip card, it doesn't say, well, do you have to pay out on that and actually use some of your initial cash that you started with. So that was a bit of a challenge there to try and figure that part out. And then the other thing that we didn't realize was that rolling with 2 dice to get the game going a lot faster. So we played with 1 and it was a bit slow. And the other thing is that to win the game, you need $1 million. And we were able to achieve that fairly quickly by doing, several flips. So it may make sense to increase the challenge to either 2 million or 5. The other lacking thing is that in here, it doesn't talk about how if there's any restrictions on joint ventures and how we can structure that, and if the rent from JVs, how those would be split and all that. So it could just be where the instructions just say, hey, you know what, you guys figure that part out, because all of that stuff can be structured and however you want. So those are the comments there. In terms of the board game, it was fairly easy to figure out. The only sort of thing was like when my first impression of the board was there was an opportunity zone over here, and I wasn't sure if we were supposed to do anything with that. And then the landlord collecting rent. So you only collect rent once, and it doesn't say anywhere here about how often that 15% interest rate is, right? And so we just assumed that it was a one-time payment and that we could pay that back. So when it was just the 2 of us playing, it was easy enough that we didn't need the hard money lender sheets to calculate that. So overall, the game was really worth the cost of it because, 1, my kid learned what after repair value was. He learned about taxation, and he learned how to add up the AVR, and he was asking questions about, well, how come I can't borrow against the AVR, right? Which is a very good question. So that reminds me, that's also one of the things that was lacking in here, because as you know, in Canada, one of the things that we have access to is accessing the equity in our homes, and this game does not allow you to do that. So just a few comments on this game. So overall, really good. Happy with the purchase. So highly recommend it as a way to teach your kids about money and how to flip in real estate. Okay.